Class 9 Biology, Chapter 3 Diversity in Living Organisms, Video number 2. Topics covered: 5 Kingdom Classification. Here I'll be discussing about the features of Kingdom Monera, Kingdom Protista, Kingdom Fungi, Kingdom Plantae, and Kingdom Animalia. And at the end, we'll have a comparative account on all these 5 kingdoms present in the living world. Already discussed, Robert Whittaker had classified the living world into 5 kingdoms, and this he had done on the basis of cell design, mode of nutrition, and body organization. So, organisms which were prokaryotic, they were placed under kingdom Monera. Those organisms which are eukaryotic, they may be either unicellular or multicellular. So eukaryotic unicellular organisms are placed under the kingdom Protista, whereas eukaryotic multicellular organisms may or may not have cell wall. So the eukaryotic organisms which are multicellular and have a cell wall, but then if they are photoautotropic, they are placed under the kingdom Plantae or plant kingdom, whereas the eukaryotic multicellular organisms which have cell wall but show heterotrophic nutrition, they are placed under the kingdom Fungi. And finally, the organisms which are eukaryotic, multicellular but do not have cell wall are placed under the kingdom Animalia. So now let us study about each of these kingdoms one by one. First we have the kingdom Monera. So first let's see the features of Monerans. The Monerans are all prokaryotes. Okay, so this particular kingdom has only prokaryotic organisms. What are prokaryotes? Organisms which have a cell that does not contain well defined nucleus. So nucleus is not well defined, first thing, and these organisms also lack the membrane bound organelles. So these are also absent in case of prokaryotes. This kingdom Monera includes only unicellular organism. As already told to you that prokaryotic cells is incapable of making multicellular body. Though you may find the Monerans found in colonies. So they may be living in colonies, but they don't form multicellular body. They all are unicellular. Then the other important feature of Moneran is that they may or may not have a cell wall. Cell wall may or may not be present. This is another feature. Some of them like bacteria has cell wall, whereas mycoplasma does not contain cell wall. So cell wall may or may not be present. This is another feature. Talking about the mode of nutrition, the organisms can either be autotrophic in showing autotrophic nutrition, that is there they can make their own food, or they may be heterotrophic. So the organisms can either be autotrophic or heterotrophic. And in this Monera kingdom, one thing very important to tell you is that all the microorganisms that take part in this nitrogen cycle, they all belong to kingdom Monera. So these are some of the important characteristic features of kingdom Monera. Right, now the examples of Monerans. Here are the examples of Moneran. This particular kingdom includes bacteria, mycoplasma, and blue-green algae or cyanobacteria. So some of the cyanobacteria's pictures are here. One is Anabina and other is Oscillatoria. So these are the different Monerans, examples of Monerans. And the cyanobacteria or blue-green algae, it can fix atmospheric nitrogen. So you have learned in your class 8, you might have learned about nitrogen cycle, and all those microbes which are involved in nitrogen cycle, they all belong to this particular kingdom. So these are the important features of kingdom Monera. Now coming to kingdom Protista. Now protistans are the organisms which are eukaryotic, that is each of these organisms will have a well defined nucleus. They have nucleus present in them. They also have membrane bound organelles. But then these are unicellular. The organisms are unicellular. So eukaryotic unicellular organisms are called as protistans. right? The other important feature is that organisms can either be autotrophic, that is they can make their own food, or they may be heterotrophic. So these are some features. And one more very important thing is that most of these protistans, they have got some locomotory structures or appendages. Like in case of amoeba, you find they have pseudopodia. They produce finger-like projections which are called as pseudopodia, and with the help of pseudopodia, these amoeba, they float in water. Whereas in case of paramecium is another protestant. It has got cilia. Many hair-like bristles-like structures are present. So cilia is a locomotory structure of paramecium. And is in case of euglena, there's a long whip-like structure present which is called as flagella. So many of these protistans may have such locomotory structures like pseudopodia in case of amoeba, cilia in case of paramecium, and these flagella in the case of euglena. So these are examples: amoeba, paramecium, euglena, and what you have over here is this is diatom. So these are all examples of protistans. Protistans are eukaryotic, unicellular organisms. They are eukaryotic because they have got nucleus and they have the membrane bound organelles. Next kingdom of the living world is kingdom fungi. Fungi includes organisms which are eukaryotic. The organisms are eukaryotic because they have got a well defined nucleus in their cell. Then other important feature is most of them are multicellular. The organisms are multicellular. You got examples of mushrooms and voles. Yeast is an example of a unicellular fungi. Then the type of nutrition that they show is they all are heterotrophs. Heterotrophs are the organisms which cannot prepare their own food and depend upon ready-made organic matter for obtaining nourishment. So those which are heterotrophs can either be decomposers. Decomposers or saprotrophs are those organisms which obtain their nourishment from dead and decomposed organic matter. Or some of them may also be parasite, those which cause diseases. They may be they feed on the living tissues of the host. So organisms or fungi can either be decomposers or saprotrophs, or they may be parasites. Other important feature of kingdom fungi is that these organisms have got cell wall, and the cell wall is made up of a special kind of carbohydrate which is called as chitin. Chitin also makes the exoskeleton, outer skeleton of insects. Remember this. So cell wall of fungi is not made up of cellulose. Cellulose is a material that makes a cell wall of plants. But of fungi, the cell wall is made up of a special sugar which is called as chitin. And these fungi, they multiply or they reproduce asexually through the process of spore formation. So these are the examples. The picture shows the examples of different fungi. You've got rhizopus, there is aspergillus, this is penicillium, and this one is agaricus. So these are the examples of kingdom fungi. Some of the species of fungi are found to make symbiotic association with blue-green algae or cyanobacteria. And this symbiont or the dual relationship where the fungi forms a symbiotic association with blue-green algae, this symbiont is called as lichens. You must have seen such colorful patches present on the bark of the trees or on the surface of the rocks, and these colorful patches are the lichens, and these lichens, they are formed by symbiotic association of fungi. There is a fungal partner in it and there is an algae. The role of fungus is that it will provide, you see this picture, so here it shows that the fungus may provide shelter to this blue-green algae. That is one function of fungi, and the other role of fungi in this association is that it absorbs the raw material. Water and minerals are absorbed from the surface of rocks or from the barks, and that is provided to the blue-green algae. So that's the role of fungi. The blue-green algae which is present in this fungi, its role is that it will be, as it is photoautotropic, it makes food by the process of photosynthesis, and this food it shares with that of fungi. Try to recall, you must have learned about symbiotic association, which is a type of relationship between two organisms, a close relationship between two organisms where both the organisms are mutually benefited. So here we have got lichens, which are the examples of symbionts formed by symbiotic association of fungi and the blue-green algae. Right? Now coming to the next kingdom, that is kingdom Plantae or plant kingdom. Plant kingdom includes organisms which are eukaryotic, they are multicellular, and these organisms are autotrophic. That is, the organisms can prepare their own food by the process of photosynthesis. They are chlorophyllous, that they contain chlorophyll in their cells, and these organisms, they have a cell wall which is mainly made up of cellulose. So these are some of the important features of Plantae, kingdom Plantae. The organisms are eukaryotic, multicellular, photoautotropic, chlorophyllous, having a cell wall made up of cellulose. In my next video, I'll be telling you about how this plant kingdom is further classified on the basis of certain characteristic features in detail. The last kingdom of this of the living world is the kingdom Animalia or animal kingdom. And this animal kingdom, it includes organisms which are eukaryotic, that is, they have got nucleus and cell organelles in their cell. The organisms are heterotrophic, okay, that is, they depend upon other organisms or depend upon the outside organic matter for obtaining nourishment. Then the organisms are multicellular, they are made up of many cells, they do not have a cell wall. Okay, so these organisms do not have cell wall, they are achlorophyllous, that is, they do not have chlorophyll in their cell. Okay, so these are, and then they have a type of nutrition, they are heterotrophic, and the kind of nutrition that is shown by most of the animals is holozoic nutrition, that is, they ingest food, they feed on, like, that is, they take food, and those which are like these animals, they show holozoic nutrition, and they, the kind of food may be either plant or flesh. Accordingly, the animals may be herbivorous, carnivorous, or omnivorous. So that's about the 5 kingdoms of the living world. This is a flow chart, this is a comparative account showing all those 5 kingdoms. So let us just have a look at this, what we have learned so far. Let us summarize. These are the 5 kingdoms of the living world as Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. In terms of the cell design, Monera, it includes prokaryotic organisms, whereas the rest of the kingdoms includes the eukaryotic organisms. That coming to the cell wall, monerans, they may or may not have cell wall. But remember that the cell wall of this bacteria is a moneran, the cell wall is not made up of cellulose. Rather, it is made up of some special proteins and sugars. So it is not made up of cellulose. Protista, in case of protistans, again cell wall may or may not be present. Diatoms have cell wall, but amoeba, paramecium, euglena lacks a cell wall. Fungi has a cell wall, and the cell wall is made up of chitin. Just now I had told you. Then the plants, they have a cell wall which is made up of mainly cellulose, and animal kingdom, they do not have a cell wall. Now coming to the presence or absence of nucleus, as monerans are prokaryotic, nucleus, a well-defined nucleus is absent, but in the rest of the 4 kingdoms you find a well-defined nucleus is present. Now coming to body organization, monerans are unicellular, protistans are unicellular, fungi, it is mostly multicellular. Yeast is an exception, which is single cell. Plantae, they are multicellular organisms showing tissue or organ level of organization, and animals are also multicellular showing either tissue level organization, organ level, or organ system level of organization. Type of nutrition, monerans can either be autotrophic or they may be heterotrophic. So those which are autotrophic can either be chemoautotrophic, that is, they take energy from like by oxidizing chemicals, so that is used, or blue green algae, which is a moneran, it takes gets the energy required for making food from light, so it is photoautotropic in nature. And those which are heterotrophic, they may be either saprophytic in nature or parasitic in nature. Protistans, they also include autotrophic organisms as well as heterotrophic organisms. The kingdom fungi, all the organisms are heterotrophic, but then they may be either saprophytic or parasitic. Kingdom Plantae includes exclusively autotrophic organism, and the type of or the method by which they make food is photosynthesis. So the more Plantae kingdom or kingdom Plantae, it includes photoautotrophic organisms, and kingdom Animalia, they are all heterotrophic, showing mostly holozoic nutrition or saprophytic or parasitic mode of nutrition. So that's about the 5 kingdoms of the living world. On the basis of the first and the second video that I have uploaded in this um, chapter, here are some questions that you have to answer in your assignment copy. The first question is, what is classification? Write its importance. Second, mention the characteristics used for hierarchical classification. Third is, why are the characters used for classifying plants different from that of animals? Next, on what basis did Robert Whittaker classify the living world into 5 kingdoms? Next is, differentiate between kingdom Monera and kingdom Protista, and differentiate between kingdom Fungi and kingdom Plantae.